Now, ladies and gentlemen, our next guest knows a little bit about the history of the chamber because he was the man in charge for about one of every 5 of the 125 years. Will you please welcome Mr. Fred Ball.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
How are you? Please have a seat.
If you can use some exotic booze, there's a bar a far-gone day. Come fly with me, let's fly away.
Now, Fred, thanks for coming out. Do I call you Fred?
Please do.
I will. Now, as you look back, what were some of the biggest accomplishments of the chamber during the 25 that you were president?
Oh boy. The first one that comes to mind is bringing the Utah Jazz to Utah. Wendell Ashton, who was the publisher, Wendell Ashton, the publisher of the Deseret News, was the chairman of our board that year. And at our board and staff retreat, he said, we've got to become a major league city. So they gave me the responsibility of finding a team, a major league team we could get here. Now, we weren't going to get NFL football. Sunday games wouldn't go well in Utah. We weren't big enough for Major League Baseball. So I've tried to find the worst, least profitable, least supported NBA team, and the New Orleans Jazz won. So Wendell and I and Mayor Ted Wilson went to New Orleans. They played their games in the Superdome. It seated 50,000 for basketball, and the night we were there were about 1,200 people. It was empty, and you could hear the players talking on the floor, and the vendors were going up and down the aisles whispering, beer, hot dogs, you know. There was nobody there. So we met with Sam Battistone and Larry Bo Hatfield after the game. Sambo's Restaurants, that's where they made their money. And we tried to convince them to come to Utah. They said we weren't big enough. We asked them how many season tickets they had sold, and they said about 1,000. So Wendell and I came back, and for the next 30 days, we knocked on every chamber member's door, and we sold about 6,000 season tickets, put the money in escrow, flew back, and convinced them to come to Utah. And they did. And we were a lousy team. We were a lousy team, and we couldn't get anybody to come to the games. So we had a season ticket. If you buy one, you'd get 4. Buy one ticket, you get 3. And we even played 13 home games a year in Las Vegas, because we didn't have anybody come. And then we drafted Darrell Griffith. We got Ricky Green, we got Adrian Dantley. Suddenly we become competitive. And I spent the first 4 years after they came, I was trying to sell season tickets. And the rest of my chamber career, I was telling people, don't call me, there are no tickets. So it was a great, so that was the number one thing, I think.
Great.
Another one I think about is, of course, the Olympics. In 1969, the Chamber of Commerce started that effort with General Maxwell Rich, Jack Gallivan, Gene Donovan, Walker Wallace. They went to Rome to bid for the 72 games, lost in the first round. Jack Gallivan came back and said, you know, we didn't want to win. When people thought ski the Rockies in those days, they thought Colorado. They never thought Utah. So they were bidding to try to establish that we were a ski center. But Jack came back and said, we could win this thing. And so the next charge they gave me, they said, what we want you to do is bring the Olympics to Utah. And so Frank Jocklick, David Johnson, Tom Welch did a great job with that bid committee over the years. And I think those 17 days in 2002 were some of the greatest days in the history of Utah. So that was a big factor.
Very nice.
And then, if I think of one other, it might be that it's not as significant, but it's very significant at the time, and that was the Delta Hub. Kim Gardner, a recent giant in our city, a recipient, was chairman of the Salt Lake Airport Authority. I was the chairman of what we call the Utah agencies, the Utah Air Travel Commission. And Mayor Ted Wilson, again, we tried to get Western Airlines in those days to bring their hub to Utah. Larry Lee of Western Airlines, we worked with him, started that hub, Delta bought it, and thousands of jobs, great air service, what happened to our airport. So those are the 3 things I think about, basically.
Good. Yeah, it definitely deserves a hand. Now, was there anything that didn't turn out too well? Do you have any regrets?
Oh, we had some bumps in the road. I guess the one I think about first was very controversial. We decided that we wanted to have the city and county of Salt Lake. There were 10 police departments, 10 mayors, 10 fire departments, 10 purchasing agents. We said, let's emulate Jacksonville, Florida, and Indianapolis, Indiana, and have the city and county of Salt Lake. one government. And so we got that issue on the ballot, and every city employee from all those other municipalities, every firefighter, every policeman were knocking on doors, and we got beat terribly on that one. It was a big defeat. And we have all these different municipalities. It probably was working very well, but we thought at the time it was a good idea. We got beat on that one. Lee Vonderich was out here talking about tourism. When the tourism was part of the Chamber of Commerce, we didn't have enough money to fund it, and so we spun it off over to the Salt Palace and did something that was very, very, very controversial. We established a county-by-county option, 1% sales tax on restaurant food. And every restaurant quit the Chamber of Commerce. There were petitions at every restaurant. We were picketed because they said, you're going to kill every restaurant in Utah. Nobody's going to go to the restaurants anymore if you get this enacted. Well, it did get enacted, and I was trying to talk to every Rotary Club and Kiwanis Club and Garden Club in the state saying, look, we need the money to promote tourism, visitors, and conventions. If you go out to a restaurant from now on, it's not going to cost you $50 to eat. It's going to cost you $50.50. If it's a special occasion and you go to Cafe Madrid or Lugano's and it's going to cost you $100, it's going to cost you $101. But I don't think people are going to stay home. About 3 months after that passed, nobody remembered again that they were paying that sales tax. It started at the Salt Lake Valley Visitors and Convention Bureau. It funded all kinds of tourism, visitors. I said I love tourism because I told people, they come, these visitors and tourists and convention goers, they come. We don't educate their kids. We don't fix their chuck holes. We don't pick up their garbage, but they pay our taxes, a lot of them. And so we love that. And that was another big success, or a failure in some people's mind because it was so controversial.
Wow. What's the craziest thing that ever happened during your time as chamber president?
Oh. I was asked to be the annual speaker at the Miles City, Montana Chamber of Commerce annual meeting. And I said, I can do it, but I've got to be back the next afternoon for a chamber function I've got to be to, and there's no air flight in and out of Miles City. So they said, will you fly to Billings? We'll have a car, and we'll take you into the annual meeting and bring you back to Billings the next morning. So I spoke that night at their chamber meeting, and the next morning I tried to open the door to the motel, and I couldn't open the door. I couldn't look out the window. It had snowed, the biggest snowstorm in history of Miles City, and the motel was snowed in. So I called the front desk, and they said, we're terribly sorry. I said, I got to get back to Salt Lake. And they said, the roads are closed, everything's closed, but we've got a guy on his way over now with a snow blower to get you out of your room, get you to the lobby. So I went over in the lobby, and I was sitting in the hotel lobby, and about 3 hours later, they said, good news. We've cleared off the little private runway here, the little private airport, and there's a plane coming in. It's a local mortician bringing a body. And you can go back on a... So they put me on the back of this snowmobile. I had my briefcase and my overcoat, and they took me this little runway, and I saw this plane circling around, and it landed. There was a guy in the passenger seat like this, you know, with a blanket up to here, and they took him out of that seat, laid him on the snow, and they said, hop in. I got in that airplane, and we took off to Billings, and that pilot, we were up there about 20 minutes, he turned out to me, and he said, you're a hell of a lot better company than that last guy that was in here. So that was it. A great 25 wonderful, wonderful years for me. I loved every day of it.
Now, as you look at the organization today, are you proud of the role that you played?
Very proud of the role I played, but I'm also very proud of the role that's been played over all these years. I'm so impressed with Lane Beatty and his staff and the board, what's been happening in recent years. And you know, I shudder to think what this community would be like without the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce. Over the years, done so many great things, controversial sometimes, like, well, I can go back to 72, that Main Street beautification project, what I won't talk about. But nonetheless, I'm just saying, this chamber is a marvelous, marvelous tool. And unabashedly and unashamedly a tool of business. And I'm so proud of being a part of it for those 25 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Fred Ball.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.